Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And, today we're really kind of stepping into a different world, um, the world of mental health challenges, but not in the way you might think, right?
Right.
We're actually exploring this through fiction excerpts from a story about a young woman navigating, a really tough time.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is she's only ever referred to as I throughout these excerpts.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's really like you get dropped right into her headspace.
You're experiencing her world firsthand, and I think that's part of the power of this piece.
Absolutely. And I think stripping away the name,
Hmm.
allowing us just to focus on her internal experience, I think that's such an interesting choice by the author.
Yeah, it definitely pulls you in.
Mm.
And we start with her, like in the psychiatrist's waiting room, right?
Yeah.
And the author kind of paints this picture of this really sterile environment,
Yeah.
beige
Oh, yeah,
windowless.
like almost institutional.
It's institutional.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, even the details about her clothes and her hair, it's not just about, hygiene.
Right.
It really speaks to, I think, a state of depression where even basic self-care just feels completely overwhelming.
Right. It's like the author is using the setting to almost foreshadow her internal state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's Dr. Gordon, the psychiatrist himself, right?
Yeah.
She's built up this image in her mind of this wise, understanding, kind of figure.
Yeah.
And then he turns out to be this young, good-looking, maybe even a little bit arrogant, you
Yeah.
know? And it's not what she expected at all. I actually laughed out loud when she described him as, the kind of guy who probably spent his college years throwing money at the birds.
Oh, yeah. I love that line. And it's interesting, though, right? Because her humor, even in the midst of all this distress, I think it kind of acts as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's a way to distance herself from the vulnerability of the situation.
Totally. But her reaction to the family photo on
Yeah.
his desk, that to me was particularly telling.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this seemingly perfect family triggers this wave of discomfort, And I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you think is driving that?
Well, I mean, it could be so many things, right? I mean, maybe she's feeling a sense of inadequacy,
Right.
comparing her struggles to their, perceived happiness.
Right.
It could also be like this fear of judgment, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
worrying that he won't take her seriously because she doesn't fit into that kind of societal mold of, the perfect family.
It's almost like this underlying current of shame.
Absolutely. And that's such a crucial aspect of mental health, right?
Yes.
The pressure to conform to these expectations, to fit in. And then the shame that can kind of bubble up when we feel like we're falling short.
So much of this excerpt feels like it's about that not belonging, being
Mm.
somehow different. And it's amplified by the way she describes struggling to even articulate her feelings to Dr. Gordon.
Yeah.
She mentions insomnia, the lack of appetite, inability to focus on reading.
The classic symptoms.
But there's this whole other layer of anxiety, right?
Right.
About her handwriting that she keeps to herself.
That's so
It's like,
fascinating.
why wouldn't she reveal that?
Well, I think, it suggests this desire for control, right?
Right.
This need to present a certain version of herself,
Oh, interesting.
even in a situation where, vulnerability is key to actually getting help.
Right.
So, this could be a sign of what we call in psychology avoidant coping mechanisms.
Oh, okay.
It's basically you try to minimize distress by avoiding, the source of the problem.
Avoid, avoid, avoid.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
And it also makes me think about like trust, in a therapeutic relationship. If she doesn't feel safe enough to reveal all of herself,
Right.
how can she truly benefit?
You're hitting on such a key point.
Yeah.
Trust is the foundation
The bedrock.
of effective therapy. And in this case, it seems like she's holding back. And, maybe it's past experiences, maybe it's a fear of being judged, but it's this barrier that really needs to be addressed for any meaningful progress to even occur.
Yeah. And to make matters worse, Dr. Gordon doesn't exactly seem to be picking up on her cues.
No.
Instead of exploring like the reasons behind these symptoms, he's focused on these like surface level details.
Yeah.
Like her college experience.
Right. Like they're speaking completely different languages.
It's like they're not even in the same room.
Yeah, right.
It's so frustrating to witness.
It's heartbreaking, and it really highlights this common pitfall that we see in mental health care, right?
What's that?
We tend to focus on the symptoms and not
Yeah.
the underlying emotional experiences
Right.
that are actually driving those symptoms.
Right.
It's a missed opportunity to really connect with her on a deeper level and understand what's really going on.
And I imagine it took so much courage for her to even seek help in the first place. So, I leaves Dr. Gorda's office feeling, misunderstood, even more alone. And it's in this vulnerable state that she encounters a sailor in the park. And this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this is where things take a turn. Yeah, this encounter with the sailor, yeah, it really marks a shift in the story.
Yeah.
It creates this whole new persona. She calls herself Ellie Higginbottom. She even lies about her age.
Yeah.
It's almost as if she's trying on a different identity, like testing out a reality where she can escape, the weight of her problems.
And it's so interesting because it's such a contrast to her inability to be honest with Dr. Gordon.
Right.
Like, why do you think she feels more comfortable making up this whole life story with a complete stranger?
Well, it could be the power of anonymity,
Yeah.
right? With the sailor, there's no history, no expectations,
Mhm.
there's no fear of judgment. She can just be anyone she wants to be, even if it's just for a little while.
It's escapism at its finest.
Pure escapism, yeah.
It makes me think about, how we often present these different versions of ourselves depending on who we're with and what we're trying to get.
It's so true, and it really ties into this concept of the persona, in psychology.
Okay.
Which is basically, this mask that we kind of put on to meet these societal expectations.
The mask we wear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for someone like I, who's already struggling with, her sense of self,
Yeah.
these masks can actually make things worse. They can lead to more confusion and isolation.
More layers to hide behind.
Yeah, exactly. And then she bumps into that woman in the park.
Oh, gosh, don't even get me started on that woman. I mean,
Yeah.
her reaction is so intense, resentment, anger, even blame.
Yeah, she's projecting so much of her pain onto this random stranger.
Why do you think that is?
It just shows how deep her struggle really is,
Yeah.
It's easier to lash out at someone else,
Right.
to find someone to blame, than to actually confront, what's going on inside.
It's that feeling of powerlessness, right? When we feel like we have no control over our own lives.
Exactly.
It's tempting to try and find it somewhere else.
Right? Even if it means, blaming others for our problems.
Makes you feel a little better in the moment, but it's not a long-term solution.
Not at all. It's like a self-defeating cycle, You just keep feeling like a victim.
And you never actually take responsibility for your own healing.
Exactly. And speaking of feeling overwhelmed, her symptoms start to get even worse after this encounter.
Oh, yeah.
14 nights without sleep, difficulty swallowing, and then her writing becomes almost illegible.
Oh, my gosh. It's like she's literally falling apart.
It is. And here's where the author's use of symbolism is just brilliant.
I was going to say that deteriorating handwriting.
It's a perfect visual representation of her internal state,
Yeah.
right? It's almost like her distress is physically manifesting on the page.
It's like a physical cry for help.
It is.
And it really highlights that mind-body connection.
Yeah.
What's happening in our minds affects our bodies. Absolutely. It's not just some new age idea. It's a real thing.
It's science.
Yeah.
And then she goes back to see Dr. Gordon for that second session.
Oh, boy.
And it's like nothing has changed. He's still clueless.
He doesn't get it.
He doesn't get it.
Yeah.
He's talking about shock treatments without even trying to understand her situation.
It's so frustrating.
You see her trying to show him those scraps of her letter.
Yeah, hoping he'll notice.
Hoping he'll see the deterioration in her handwriting and finally understand how much she's suffering.
But he misses it completely.
He misses it completely, and it's just a reminder of how broken the mental health system can be.
It's so focused on quick fixes, and it doesn't always address the root of the problem.
And this feeling of not being heard of, not being taken seriously, it just pushes even further into despair.
Right, and she starts thinking about suicide. She even researches, how high she needs to jump to make sure it's fatal.
That detail about her being afraid of blood, it just sent chills down my spine.
Oh, yeah, it's haunting. It's like you see that conflict, between her desire to escape the pain and that basic human instinct to survive.
Yeah, it's that internal battle that so many people face,
And we don't talk about it enough.
No, we don't.
It's not just about wanting to die.
Right.
It's about wanting the pain to stop.
It's a cry for help that often goes unanswered.
And that's the tragedy.
Absolutely.
But even in that darkness, there's still a flicker of hope.
Oh, yeah.
That fear of blood, that instinct for survival, it shows that a part of her still wants to live.
Still holding on.
Still holding on to the possibility of something better. And it's like she's at this breaking point, right, where the pain is just too much.
Yeah, she's desperate.
She even tries to run away to Chicago, start fresh, reinvent herself.
Right, clean slate.
But it all falls apart, money, fear, all that emotional baggage. It just weighs her down.
Like she's paralyzed.
Totally. And
Okay.
then out of nowhere, she just hops on a bus.
Oh, wow, just like that.
Doesn't even know where it's going, just needs
Ah.
to get away
Needs to escape.
from it all. And I think that's what makes this ending so powerful. It's both liberating and terrifying.
Right, because on the one hand, she's taking action, she's breaking free.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like, where's she going? What's going to happen to her?
It's the unknown, right? And I think it really mirrors the whole mental health recovery journey. It's not a straight line, you know?
No, it's full of twists and turns.
Setbacks, breakthroughs, and sometimes the most important thing is just to keep moving, even if you don't know where you're headed.
It's about taking back control even when everything feels chaotic.
And that bus ride, it's almost like a metaphor for her journey,
Oh, absolutely, a journey toward healing.
which might be long and difficult.
But there's always that hope for something better.
And I think leaving it open-ended, not knowing what happens next, that's what makes this story so thought-provoking.
Yeah, because it really forces us to think about, the complexities of mental health.
Yeah.
The long-term effects of trauma, how hard it can be to get help, and, what can we do as a society to support people who are struggling?
It's a reminder that everyone's journey is different.
Absolutely.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and sometimes the best thing we can do is just offer compassion and understanding.
Just be there to listen.
Exactly. And these excerpts, they've given us such a powerful glimpse into this world,
Yeah, a world that's often misunderstood.
and stigmatized.
Absolutely. And I think they've challenged us to confront our own biases and to think about how we can create a more supportive environment for people with mental health challenges.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a question for you, the listener. If you met someone like someone who's lost and hurting, how would you reach out to them?
That's a great question.
What could you do to make their journey a little bit easier, a little less lonely?
Even the smallest act of kindness can make a difference.
It really can, because sometimes that human connection is all it takes to start the healing process.
So powerful.
So let's all try to be a little more mindful, a little more compassionate, and remember that we all have a role to play in creating a world where mental health is treated with the same importance as physical health.
Yes.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.